What's going on, everyone? I'm Travis Brown with The Eagle. I'm here with special guest Michael Katz of the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. I got all that out on the first try, and I'm excited about that. Michael, how's it going, man?
Can't complain, man. It's starting to feel a little bit like it's not summer, it's nice. I lived in Wyoming before this, so any sort of temperate environment, it's nice to kind of I can put on a sweatshirt again, which is really nice for me.
Yeah, it's great when we get to go on some of these SEC road trips because it feels like fall other places. Here, yeah,
not so much.
Not so much. I mean, I guess we're in the 80s, which is technically like not summer for us. Let's see. The good old Apple Watch says it's actually 79 right now on in the afternoon on a Thursday. So it's gonna be lovely for you when you get here.
Perfect.
Awesome, man. Well, let's start with the way we always start these things. And what is the biggest storylines, points of interest for Ole Miss coming into this game?
I think the big one is kind of obvious is how does this team bounce back from its first loss? Things had gone not necessarily super easily or smoothly up to last week against LSU, but they were 7-0. They were a top 10 team. They had pretty much been able to do everything they wanted for the most part, but we kind of saw signs of maybe things not being perfect in the game against Auburn when Auburn ran for 301 yards, and Tulsa, who's an air raid team, when their backup quarterback, who's a more mobile guy, came in, they ran for 250 something, and LSU, Jane Daniels is another mobile guy, and those sorts of offenses have given Ole Miss problems, and they gashed them. I mean, Ole Miss really had no answers for that sort of running game, and so I think it's how do they respond to? They've been exploited. People now know what the weakness is, how you can beat Ole Miss, not just even on defense, but they slowed down the offense too. After that, they got to a 17-3 start, and they scored 3 points the rest of the game, which was just really kind of unexpected because they had 200 yards of offense in the first quarter and then just nothing after that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this staff plans around not just getting the morale back up and seeing how guys bounce back, but seeing how how do you change the game plan? How do you fix their problems with only a few games left? I mean, it's Lane Kiffin said that when you don't play, no disrespect to Georgia Tech and Troy and Central Arkansas, but those aren't super talented rosters compared to LSU and A&M and Alabama and what's kind of coming down the road. And when you play against those teams early in the season, those really talented ones, you learn what your weaknesses are. But Ole Miss, they got the nice start, but they didn't really get exposed until late in the season. How do you fix that run defense? How do you fix a run game that ran for a season low 117 yards after they were averaging like 217 coming in? How do you fix all those things? Not only in such a short amount of time, but in another hostile environment with a team that Lane Kiffin was the portal king, but with that comes a lot of guys who don't have experience in these sorts of environments.
I know you mentioned a little bit of a down run game for Ole Miss against LSU. I know probably at least a part of that was missing Zach Evans, the kind of the two-headed running back threat that Ole Miss has there. Do you expect him to be back for this game? Maybe what's the status of him, and what has that tandem been able to do that has made Ole Miss one of the best running offenses in the country?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt Zach Evans was, Lane talks about there's a reason that they do star ratings. Zach was a 5-star kid coming out of high school before he went to TCU. He was really good there. He was really good here. He has been really good here. But, I think there's a couple things that kind of contribute to the run game slowing down a little bit. One is obviously not having Evans and having, Quinshon Judkins has been amazing this year. He's a true freshman that's got 800 some yards and 12 touchdowns. I mean, he's been remarkable, but when you don't have another guy that you can, switch in and out and you don't miss a step, it means Judkins has to play a lot of snaps. And I think that does And when a guy is playing that many snaps and you can't bring in, Ulysses Bentley is the guy who, came in and he's dealing with injuries too. There's just not a lot there behind him. And so I think it changes things a little bit from that perspective. They've also been, Lane brought up that they are trying to run Jackson Dart less now. He'd been doing a really good job running the ball over the last few games. And I think it's a preservation thing. You got to keep him healthy. Jackson Dart does not like to slide. He wants to lower his shoulder. He's not willingly running out of bounds. So I think those sorts of things contribute. In terms of Zach playing, it's interesting because he was warming up and doing all the stuff before the game. But as you know, some SEC coaches, it's pretty hard to get information. I've always likened it to trying to get the nuclear codes with injury information from Lane, and I get it. It's gamesmanship. I think there's two schools of thinking here. This is a really big game, and I think they know that. You've got a bye coming up. Do you give it a go, and then if it doesn't work, you give him a week off, or do you give him the full extra 2 weeks if he sits out this game? So, I think we thought he was going to play last week, but we don't get to see a ton of practice stuff. But Lane told us that he hadn't practiced all week, and so it was interesting to see him out there warming up. So it's a 50-50 shot. I think I don't want to say they need him because Quinshon Judkins is really good, but if Ole Miss wants to do the things it does and control the game and that just powerful running game that just kind of wears the guys down, they're going to need Evans and Judkins.
Yeah. On the defensive side of the ball, I mean, I think this is slated up to be whichever run defense plays better. Because you got Devon A-Chain on A&M's side. Haynes King is a little bit of a mobile quarterback when he's not banged up. Whichever run defense steps up and is the better one is going to be the one that wins this game. For the A&M side, that relies on DJ Durkin, of course, the former Ole Miss defensive coordinator. What have you seen from Ole Miss's defense so far this year in their first year away from him? And is it a case of they've been able to find their stride, or do you feel like he's a guy that they've missed so far this season?
I think there's a frustration from, I know, obviously Twitter is not the barometer of what everybody thinks, but I know there are some people who are frustrated that, maybe the defense hasn't adapted yet to its liabilities in the run game. And Ole Miss is a 3-man rush, and that's what they do, and they like to play a lot of defensive backs and 2 linebackers because that's kind of what their strength is. But it's when you've been gashed the way they have the last couple of weeks in the run game, something's got to give eventually, right? And so DJ Durkin did do an amazing job last year. But, Partridge was doing Chris Partridge, who's the play caller now, had been doing a really good job for the first, part of the season. Again, strength of schedule is a part of that when you're not playing, the upper echelon of teams and the numbers look really, really good. But, it's you go back to that Kentucky game. I think that's the game that Ole Miss tries to kind of remind itself of. They held Will Levis and Chris Rodriguez was back to, 19 points, and they made the plays when they had to make them. That defense is still in there, and I think there's frustration that it's not there all the time. Like, they know they have it in them. Why isn't it there on a consistent basis? And, Ole Miss is a little bit beat up. Again, we don't know what it's going to look like come Saturday, but, they lost their starting linebacker during the game. They lost their starting safety during the game. We don't know what the deal is with them. But those are 2 big time, run game defenders. And so it's if the run defense does what it did the last 2 weeks, it's going to be a really, really, really long day for Ole Miss because people know that's what you can do against them now. The book is out. You can run on Ole Miss as currently constructed.
Yeah. So what is it that Ole Miss will need to do well in this game to come out with the win?
It's simple, but they got to win up front, and that has been a problem the last couple of weeks. And again, that goes to when you start playing the really good talent. LSU beat them up front. Jackson Dart does a really good job of eluding pressure and stepping up in the pocket and making plays. But he's been sacked 6 times this year, which is not that many, but 3 of them came last week. And again, you saw at different points during the season, maybe they were susceptible to some pass rush, but you can get away with it against certain teams. But when you start playing the LSUs and the A&Ms and you're getting beat up front consistently, you're not going to be able to hide it. And I think that goes on the defensive line too. This is the deepest defensive line group that Ole Miss has had. They hit the portal really hard on that front. And but there's moments when you can tell they're just not quite there yet. And you saw it against LSU. They got moved off the ball. This wasn't, it wasn't necessarily the running backs doing a ton for LSU, but Jaden Daniels he got anything he wanted. And if Haynes King and Devin Echane can do that, they're going to have success. And so Ole Miss has to win up front. And I know that's the super obvious cliche thing that every coach says, but they've been beat up, especially last week, and they look. There was a 7-0 team, and they were the talk of the town. Everyone was thinking, New Year's 6, can they make the playoff? Well, now it's like, what is this team really? And so I don't know how you just flip. If you flip on a switch midseason and just start playing better up front, but they have to play better up front if they're gonna do this.
And it's a matchup of a head coach that hasn't necessarily pulled any punches. Talking about A&M's program and Jim, but now not to say that Lane Kiffin ever pulls any punches with anything he said, but might factor in a little bit with the at least a level of trolling that you could either call it trolling or you could call it a little bit disdain for what he believes is happening in Aggie land. That might leak into it either on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, Lane is never subtle when he wants a message out there, whatever that message might be. If he wants it out there, he's going to say it, and it's going to probably be really funny. He had thoughts on Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban. When that whole thing was happening, he tweeted the popcorn gif. I mean, there's a part of him that I think people love because he's just watching it like the rest of us. But no, I mean, he tells it like it is on those sorts of things. And yeah, I know I saw your tweet yesterday when he said that Ole Miss was outbid, and that's a common theme. And it's just, I saw it and I was like, of course he said it. That's what he does.
I think that is my most engaged tweet I've ever had, save for when I tweeted that all the running water went out in Bryant-Denny Stadium in 2016 and like the first quarter. So there maybe there's a common thread here. I don't know, but we'll just have to see when the game gets here this weekend. Michael, let everyone know where they can find you on social media, where they can find your work if they want to get geared up from the Ole Miss side of things leading up to this game.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Michael L. Katz, Katz. You can find my work at djournal.com. It's the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal. The tweets aren't always good, but there's a lot of them. That's the only guarantee I can make. Well,
and I'll just vouch for the guy with the middle initial L in the Twitter handle, because that's how you know you're a good sports journalist. So
people ask me if I spelled my name wrong, and sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I just put 2 L's in just for the hell of it.
I love it. I love it. Well, Michael, thanks so much for giving us a few minutes of your time. Thank you all for giving us a few minutes of your time, whether you're watching this on the video or listening on the My Aggie Nation podcast. We thank you so much for doing that. We'll be back next week with more previews of Texas A&M football.